week and 5 seconds in, and I guess we started. Welcome back, everybody. Hi, welcome to the Dinosaur Omelet.
Hi.
I'm Chris.
I'm Angela.
And welcome. Yeah, this is Dinosaur Omelet Land. We are a hatchery, a small hatchery.
Yeah, we encourage people to focus on self-sufficiency, learning skills, to better themselves, to improve your health, your just well-being, and bring the family together, get your hands in the dirt, that sort of thing.
I love getting my hands in the dirt. Yeah, quality of life. Yeah, so we focus on self-sufficiency, raising quail, hatching quail, and our, what do you call those creatures? Your silky chickens.
Mm-hmm.
Angela raises silky chickens.
And
a host of other creatures. Now, tonight, if you're stopping in, we're going to be talking about what kind of meat animal is proper for your home, homestead, or farmette, or something of this nature. A lot of you guys probably have some, what do you call it, experience with birds, right?
Yeah, most people
I would
usually
assume if they have.
start with chickens.
But we're going to be talking about everybody's thing that they like to do in the spring is broilers, spring and fall.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So before we begin, I like to always do some information handouts. Oh, you know what? Let me show you guys something. So, pull this up real quick. If you check down in the comments, close that. If you check down in the description, I made a feed conversion chart that I'll be discussing tonight, which you don't need to read along. It's not like high school where you got to follow the chart along. But yeah, that's for you guys to download later if you want to take a look at it, and I'll discuss that later. But that's the freebie this week. So I like doing educational stuff, and I make something usually every few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Angela was not here last week.
Yeah, I had some important things to take care of.
I never do. Here.
It just happened to be at the same time as our live.
Yeah, all right. So, yeah, like I was saying, if you guys aren't familiar with quail, we always get quail people showing up because it's kind of our niche. These are the delicious quail eggs. I'm not going to go into the big spiel about all the benefit of quail. We have tons of videos about that. But, yeah, those are quail eggs. And on our Facebook and down in the description of, I don't think this video, but most of them, I usually have a link to our Q&A. So go check that out. It's tons of useful turnkey information for the I've never had quail before, I'm kind of intimidated. Don't worry about it. This will get you started. It's like sea monkeys with feathers. Very easy thing to raise. And we wrote information to make it so. So if you guys are new, hit the like and sub. We appreciate that. We do actually put effort into producing worthwhile information, educational stuff.
Yeah.
Not just... what is it? People giving their nonsense commentary and two-bit opinions. Everybody's got one, right? And we try to encourage you guys to, achieve goals and pursue things and pursue your own personal objectives. Not to compare yourself to other people, because everybody does their own thing. Mm-hmm. But do your own objective and figure out what's going to bring your life satisfaction and joy.
Yeah.
That sound accurate?
Yeah, and then, of course, whatever your circumstances are, your space and energy and resources that works for you. We're just trying to help encourage and, provide information to help people work things out and consider their options.
Yeah, so let's dive into this. Actually, one more thing. We start late now. It's like 9 p.m. East Coast time, where... If you notice, we progressively are getting later and later. I think we're doing like 7:30.
Yeah, usually during the summertime we move our...
Oh, Susan. Hey, hon.
Usually we move our time around during the summertime because tending to animals with the daylight hours stretching longer, it kind of bumps this live video around in the summertime.
You imagine when you have an army of people out there doing the work, but no. Yeah, so the chickens go to bed later because of the daylight hours. So, yeah, we're out there till 8:30-ish, 8:45-ish. And then we come in and do this. Okay, cool. So, tonight's subject. I forget what it was. What was it? Let me check. Which type of meat bird should you raise? And what's the one thing we usually suggest is the first primary launch point for doing anything?
Figure out your goals?
Yeah.
Establish your goals.
Establishing your goals.
Yeah.
We didn't rehearse any of these. I kind of take notes, okay? Like I'll take notes on some important stuff that I might want to mention, just to have some structure. But I don't do like scripts or any of that goofy crap. So yeah, setting a goal. So what kind of meat bird do you want? Well, let's set a goal. I'm going to get too deep into the goal setting because it'll take a long time, but let's just set a goal. As far as planning for a meat animal, chickens, obviously. I don't want to go into rabbits or gooses or turkeys or the other big fowl or other things, but I'm going to the tiny fowl, the little quail too. So I think part of what I suggested with the thumbnail or whatever with this video was the meat chickens, which we're going to discuss, and quail. And the reason I'm bringing quail into the talk isn't just because we raise them. It is because they're a very good alternative meat animal that a lot of people can raise that are not allowed or wouldn't be able to raise chickens. So they want to raise a meat chicken or even a standard heritage breed, but they cannot due to whatever, zoning issues, neighbors, whatever the restraint is. But
even space,
sure. But they can raise, in many, many cases, usually most all the cases, they can raise a hutch of quail, which will provide substantial eggs and meat, and they're really beneficial animals. So we'll talk about them a little bit. So, what type of meat bird is right for you? So you guys, what's your questions, right? You're thinking, hey, I'll pretend this is ma'am, and ma'am is thinking of raising birds. Hi, ma'am. You're thinking of raising animals for meat, are you?
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Because I'd like to have my freezer full of meat.
How big's a freezer?
Just like a chest freezer.
Is it just for you or a bunch of kids?
Just for family, me and kids.
Okay, good.
And I'd like to have meat for the whole year.
All right,
so I can make dishes throughout the year using this meat.
You see, ma'am didn't know anything about, or I didn't know anything about ma'am, and she's not really sure what she's doing, but she's starting to whittle down towards a goal whether she knows it or not. So she wants food for the whole year. They're probably not going to be eating chicken 24 hours a day.
Mm-mm.
Great. So how often do you plan on feeding your family this meat, this chicken meat that you're raising?
I'm thinking because sometimes we'll eat a big hunk of meat on the side of our plate, and other times we just kind of use like little shredded pieces
Like
on
vultures.
top of our food. So I'm thinking maybe twice a month I'll use some chicken meat
All right.
in my food.
So 1 to 1.5 chickens a month, perhaps.
Yeah.
And now we're talking about the production of the chickens, which is going to be the larger broiler breeds. Now today I'm going to talk specifically about the Cornish cross. There are other popular meat breeds and broiler birds, and they're called broiler birds. New people who don't know much about chickens. That's an old term, comes from about, I guess, 100 years ago. People started the industrialized agriculture or centralized agriculture. Not like it is now, but people were seeking high production animals, and they started domesticating different critters and producing birds specifically that were for meat. Okay, and then we hear about heritage breeds like Rhode Island Reds. They produce meat, not as substantial, not as meaty, not as big, but there's benefit.
Larger heritage breeds.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, like Georgies and there are larger.
Even the Australorps, the black Australorps.
We have black Australorps. They produce meat and they lay eggs. But the thing with these breeds compared to the meat breeds, what are they not doing? Growing as quick?
Yeah, so a heritage breed, they're an older breed that's been specifically honed for the body type, size, shape, temperament, ability to lay eggs. But they're taking a lot longer to grow. Usually the faster ones, like the black Australorps, they're butcher ready in about 5 months, but then it could be 7 months before some of the bigger ones are really ready for butchering or processing. These broiler birds, they're like 6 to 10 weeks, depending on the breed. So that's pretty rapid. And so they have rapid state of growth. So they're putting on weight quickly.
That's the huge benefit to these broiler birds. They grow quick. There's a lot of other things to talk about them, but there's two big benefits really. They grow fast and they grow big. So you're getting a lot of meat in a short period of time. In fact, that's what that chart I was showing you earlier is all about, a feed conversion rate, and I discussed it in a previous video. Your feed conversion rate, which I'm going to talk about actually right now since I'm yapping about it. Your feed conversion rate's important because that's telling you, especially anybody who's an engineer and has chickens, or is math-minded, or is a data person. Your feed conversion rate, if you're looking at it, is going to tell you an average, an approximate of how much feed you're using to produce 1 pound of walking around chicken, okay? 1 pound of chicken. Not meat that you're going to be eating. That's usable meat yield, okay? A little different, but feed conversion rate. So the feed conversion rate for the Cornish cross, I think, is 1.6, is that right? Yeah, about 1.6 to 1.9 pounds of feed will produce 1 pound of chicken. So they need to eat 1.5 to almost 2 pounds of feed to get to grow 1 pound, okay, before butchering. To give a frame of reference for that, for a Rhode Island Red, they're eating 3 to 3.5 pounds of feed to gain the 1 pound of live weight. That's called live weight. It's a little different. They're a little slower to grow. They need a little more feed, but they have their own benefits.
Yeah, the broiler types, they're specifically, their purpose is for meat. You're not going to be raising them to lay eggs like the heritage breeds. Those ones, you know, they're reproducible. You can hatch them and they're the same breed.
Yeah, the feed conversion rate thing, I mean, that's something you're definitely looking at, especially on an industrial level scale, like when you're spending a lot, because then that you're talking about your, you know, your costs. And you're looking at your cost and where your breaking even line is and your profit margins and all that. So you want to know really who's growing the fastest or who's growing efficiently, what kind of upfront cost should I expect to get this animal to butcher weight.
Mm-hmm. And at what age are you processing them too?
Yeah. Right, and what age? You know, 6 weeks versus 8 weeks versus 10 weeks. There's a difference. You know, for people like us, you guys watching this, you're smaller, smaller operations, you have a few. You're not housing a warehouse full of chickens, right? So
unless of course you're a farm that's selling to like the local market, the farmer's market.
Well, yeah, obviously, if you're doing an operation,
if you're doing it for your family versus,
then you're not watching this video and learning anything because you've been doing this a while and you're familiar with all this stuff. But yeah, if you're in a larger operation, those feed conversion rates are important, especially at scale, as they grow larger and larger. But you should probably have an idea going in when you start raising an animal. You know, you're seeing them, how do they get so big so quick? How long does it take? Do they cost a lot of money? And unusually enough, they convert feed very efficiently. So I'm going to go over this chart real quick and try to explain it. So what is a feed conversion rate? I'm not going to focus on this as the primary aspect of this video, but be familiar with this. Feed conversion rate, FCR, is a measure of an animal's efficiency in converting feed into body weight. Its efficiency in converting feed into body weight. It's calculated by dividing the amount of feed consumed by the weight gain of the animal.
it helps me guesstimate how often I need to buy feed. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Goody. For example, if a chicken eats 3 pounds of feed and gains 1 pound of body weight, then its feed conversion rate is 3.0. It's 3. 3 pounds of food for 1 pound of live weight. So live weight is, again, chicken walking around alive. Guts, feathers, head, and beak. Right?
And feet.
And feet. Oh, the feet? Oh.
Some people like feet.
I'm going to eat the feet this year.
Well, you go ahead.
So that's your live weight. And then you're going to be looking at usable meat yield. So a usable meat yield, that's, well, what it sounds like. The meat you're going to be using from your bird, whether it's quail, a heritage breed, one of these big broilers. What amount of the meat are you getting off this bird that's actually something you're going to eat and not, or weight. How much weight coming off this bird is something you're eating and not just tossing into the trash or giving it scraps or turning it into fishing bait or whatever you're doing with it, making it into animal feed. So we're raising Cornish cross. It's a broiler breed.
Bird breed, yeah.
And what's their usable meat yield? Angela W? It's up to the top.
70 to 75% usable meat yield.
Yeah. Feed, so they have a 70 to 75% usable meat yield. That means they're, if it's a 10-pound bird, 7.5 pounds of edible meat. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Simple math. And for 1 pound, this is a feed conversion rate that I got off of one of these poultry academic sites.
And again, this is linked underneath the video.
No, the chart is. I made a little chart. I didn't
Right.
actually give the links to the websites.
No,
But-
I mean the chart.
So for 1 pound of usable meat, for example, in a Cornish cross, okay, they would have eaten 2.4, almost 2.5 pounds of feed to get the 1 pound of usable meat. Now, I get it. Chickens aren't rocket ships. These precision numbers don't really apply in real life, but it's an average, and it gives you a what do you call it? A kind of where's my brain foggy again? It's an average. It's something approximate to what you should expect. Whereas for a Rhode Island Red, for example, is there in here? I think they are on here. Or maybe I lost it. Feed conversion rate for Rhode Island Red.
Non-broiler here yet. Rhode Island.
Yeah. 4 pounds. Sorry. So for the Cornish cross to produce 1 pound of edible meat, about 2.5 pounds of feed. And for Rhode Island Red, about 4 pounds of feed. But again, they're two different birds. They have different purposes. I didn't want to get too in-depth with that because it's a lot of numbers and people don't want to hear that. It's confusing. But just to give you a little bit of background, something, a nugget for the brain, you can share at parties. I mean, what do people do at parties? They talk about chickens.
I did want to say just a tip about feeding the birds if you're raising meat birds. You may not know, but it's good to add water to, if you're using like a mash, like a dry mash, like a grinded up feed that you're buying from like a feed mill.
Yeah.
It's good to add water so that it's like kind of almost like a dryish oatmeal consistency, but it's still damp, moistened.
Why is this?
That way they're eating all of it. They will eat all of it. They're not going to waste any of it. They're not going to, if there's dust in there, they're going to eat all of it because it's going to crumble. It's going to like go together. And then also it's going to hydrate them as well while they're eating.
A lot of nice chicken feeds, like the ones we make, they have additives in it, nutritive additives. And when you moisten it, it'll make it sticky and it'll clump together. And the animals are going to get if there's vitamins, amino acids, or anything added into the feed as well.
Yeah, with broiler type birds, the feed mills, they're going to have like an animal protein usually in there, and it'll be a meal in there. So if you're adding water to it, like Christopher just said, it'll help bond to it, and they're going to get the proteins and the amino acids better. And then also, of course, no matter what you're feeding poultry-wise, the birds, the chickens, they have a gizzard, and that is a muscle in their digestive system where the food will go through.
Pause.
And
I'm pitching. If you go back into our live videos, we have a walkthrough through the wonderful chicken digestive tract, which is really a good academic class about, I guess, 3 months ago. Hi, Kelly.
Hi.
Kelly's up in our live. Hey, hon.
So it's very important to offer grit to your birds, and that will help them not overeat. Now, somebody might think, well, does that mean they're filling up on grit? No, that's not what that means. They will eat the grit. The grit will go into their gizzard, and it acts kind of like teeth for them. The grit will stay in the gizzard, and the gizzard's a strong muscle that massages the food, and the grit will help break down the food, and they'll absorb more nutrients, vitamins, minerals, everything from what they're eating. Therefore, they're getting more from the food.
Yep.
So they're going to feel fuller. They're going to get more. It's going to benefit them much more instead of just kind of passing through. Some of it's going to just pass through them.
Yeah, so the crushing, just like when you think about any kind of a seed's a little circle. And you can eat a seed, and even if you break off the husk in your digestive tract, you're not getting all the nutrients. Smash it, and instead of a little seed, it becomes a wide surface area. So you have a much wider surface area of constituent parts of that seed that the cells, digestive tract, and in the intestines will have access to and be able to break down, and the acids can break down, et cetera, et cetera.
So I mentioned that because broilers are bred just like jumbo quail. They're rapid growers. They grow very quickly, so then that means they are going to eat more food than other breeds. But like Christopher explained, that's converting to weight. So you want to be as wise as you can be with offering them proper supplements or grit, things available, and also obviously plenty of water, so they're not wasting food. You're getting your money's worth for what you're feeding them. And yeah.
Yeah, I think a common issue is overfeeding chickens. People overfeed chickens quite commonly. They just fill up a bucket. Well, chickens overeat. And they get fat. They'll have fat deposits on them.
Yeah, that's true.
So chickens will get fat. The quail won't. You're not going to see fat quail. We've never had fatty quails.
Yeah.
They eat till they're satiated, and then they go about doing quail stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Chickens, I guess it's in
their behavior. Well, if you're specifically talking, okay, broilers there's different breeds of broilers, but they tend to have a different type of temperament, obviously, than quail. Quail are curious busybodies. But then, of course, regular chickens, the heritage breeds, they often end up with lots of fat deposits because people do overfeed them. They feed them lots of treats, just constantly feeding them, or just have them, free range, like free access to food all day long, and they can actually make their lifespan less.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was going to say,
just negatively affects them.
Just like humans, that visceral fat, that fat on the
internal
organs, the stuff you don't see it, but the overeating, just like any big animal, mega or the fauna, like your dog, you don't want a fat dog. The visceral fat, the fat in their body can affect them and be impactful to their health, just like people. So that's awesome. I don't want to go too much further into the whole feed conversion issue. Just be aware of it. Especially the more animals you're going to be getting. What do we have? 8?
Yes.
8. It's not a big deal. Like we have 8 chickens. We understand what the number is, how much they're probably going to be eating. Mm-hmm. But you really want to hone that in if you're doing like 20, 30, 40.
Yeah, and if you have a feed mill you're working with, or if you have a feed mill you can call, they offer broiler feed. There's usually like a starter and a finisher. The protein amount is different, but talk to them. The feed mill guys or ladies, they know how much. Like if you say I have 5, they're gonna say, okay, well you need this much in pounds of feed for the whole life that you have them. So they're very familiar because people are often raising them and have been for very long.
Okay, I think I can move on. I had one. That's all right. I guess I'll finish with jumbo quail. Where I'm done with feed. I'm going to tell you because we raise quail and Kelly raises quail. So the jumbo Coturnix quail feed conversion rate for every 1 pound of live weight. Now I realize they're not going to be growing to a pound.
Yeah.
So how do they figure that out? They're weighing and they're doing an average between all these animals. So 2.5 to 3 pounds of feed. Is that right? 2.75 pounds of feed for 1 pound of weight. That's the average. Right? Right. So 2.5 pounds or so of feed, to produce 1 pound of living, walking around quail. And with a quail, so for 1 pound of usable quail meat, they're a different bird, it's about 4.4 pounds of feed to get the 1 pound of meat for quail if you're doing a meat program with quail. And they grow really quick too, though. What is it, 8 weeks? About 8 weeks.
8 weeks.
My phone going off. That was my baby calling me, and I put my phone on silence. But anyway, moving on. Mm-hmm. So that's a little bit about feed. I hope it wasn't too boring or confusing. There's a feed conversion rate. Anybody who joined in the description of this video, I made that from scratch, like I do with all this stuff. I hate stealing stuff off the internet, so it's on there, and It's in the description if you want to take a look at it. It gives you some numbers and may inspire you to go research it further. Now, what chicken? Oh, go ahead.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say. So I think we're gonna talk more so about the Cornish cross, but I just kind of wanted to briefly mention how there are different breeds again of the broilers. There are the differences are enough for you to really decide pros and cons as far as which breed you want to go with.
Vernon. Hey, Vernon.
Yeah, so the Cornish cross, I just wanted to kind of mention about their temperaments and kind of how they.
Okay, well, let me just tell about quail, because this is about quail versus meat bird, and anybody who's new to quail, if you're wondering, so if you just popped in here, quail, who's raising quail? So, benefits of quail. They grow quick, so in 8 weeks to 10 weeks, they're butcher ready. From the day they hatch to 8 to 10 weeks, they're butcher ready. They don't take up any space. You can raise them in a little hutch, 3 birds per every square foot. Okay, so what's a 3x4? 12. 12. That's so a 3x4. Is that what I said? Is 12 square feet times 3 birds is 24. So just to give you an idea, 24 quail in that small 3x4 hutch, and they'll fit. So they take up they don't take a lot of space. They grow real quick. They don't make very much noise.
Unless you have a bunch of males
Unless you have a bunch of males.
and they're mature.
And they produce a lot of eggs, and they're reproducible, and they reproduce quickly.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of other benefits to them. But those are the major ones. Oh, they're cheap to start with.
Yeah.
Okay, they don't cost a lot of money to get started with a quail, egg, or meat program. I think that
but they're easy, it takes a little bit of a learning curve, just like everything. But once you get it down.
Read that PDF, read that Q&A I made. This is the learning curve. It'll
they're
teach
easy
everything.
to raise, and then and obviously you're meeting their needs. You don't stick a quail in a goldfish bowl, so you meet their needs. And then also they're easy to hatch, to incubate and hatch, and just keep repopulating your personal stock.
Yeah, so they may be right for you. They may be I can't have chickens. I mean, if I couldn't have chickens, yeah, I'm definitely going to be raising quail because I want fresh, healthy eggs that I can do myself. All right, quail, sit over there. Quail sitting there. Now, meat birds. Is a meat bird right for me? Should I be raising a meat, like a specific meat bird versus the heritage breed? So we're looking at the meat birds because I want, like, what did you say, ma'am? You wanted a lot of meat? So I know these are high yield birds. They produce a lot of meat.
And then another thing too is the age that you're growing them to. Like there's a lot of big companies that will raise them just to 6 weeks, butcher them, and then they're what is that called? The small broiler that you get in the grocery stores on those little rotisserie, something like that. But they're still a big bird at 6 weeks. Or do you want them, to be as big as possible and raise them out to 10 weeks? And then when you process them, you can even have them, cut them in half, and then it's almost like a normal size, 2 normal sized chickens.
Yeah, we have them. So, question: I'm thinking of raising meat birds. I'll be the dummy person this time. So, what kind of space do I need? Do they make a lot of noise? Are they aggressive? What should I know about these birds, meat birds? And is it really worth it? Because I have Australorps, is it really worth raising the meat birds? Yes. So why? What's going on?
It depends on.
What kind of space do I need?
Yeah, well, it depends. The space will help you determine how many you're gonna have. Okay. Now the meat birds. So there's different types of ways to raise them. A popular way to raise them is in like a tractor.
Tractors.
People like to do the tractors where you have them in this cage so that you move them around on the lawn or and you can actually do that in a pretty small space because you're rotating them, throughout this space. And then there's all sorts of charts and stuff so that you can restart using the same path sort of thing. But anyway, or you can have them in like a pen, large pen setup.
We kind of free range them.
Yeah. So.
But these birds are big, so as far as free ranging goes, it's like
I would like
they sit. They're not extremely active.
Let me just talk about the thing about the Cornish cross that some people aren't too excited about is that they, depending on the setup you have, they will act to go into the feeder and laying and eating and eliminating and maybe waddling to the water and laying and drinking and then maybe waddle back to the feeder and lay and eliminate and eat and sleep. A lot of like laying and waddling around, and which is okay. But then once they get closer to processing age, if that's the way the setup they're in is encouraging the behavior, then their breast area with the skin and the feathers, they're kind of just like laying a lot, and that doesn't look the nicest. Now because I know they're low energy, so that's the thing. They're a low energy bird, and if given the opportunity to lay around and easily get to their food and water, they will. So because I know this, the way we're raising this batch, we have, like Christopher said, 8, but you could do small. You could do 2. They're quiet. They're not going to be noisy at all because you process them before they mature. Is there an age you can put Cornish cross on the ground?
Are you talking
mean
about
like as chicks?
That's probably what he's referring to.
Yeah, as long as you're meeting their needs. So Cornish cross.
When did we move ours out of brooder?
So it depends on the temperature outside. Time of year is important because they are rapid growers, rapid state of growth. That means their metabolism is faster. And people who are familiar with the quail, this is going to be familiar. They produce higher heat. You can, if you have a brooder and you have the chicks in there and they're like a week old, you can feel the heat radiating off of them. And their bodies just grow very quickly, but their feathers are not growing fast. So
yeah, they look like, what do they look like now? Like softballs, like with fuzz. They're really big, but yeah, no feathers yet.
They're just like meat. But so the thing is, you do want to keep in mind when the time of year you're raising them, because you're not going to want to have them in a brooder long. A lot of people will have them like in a barn, in a stall, that kind of thing. That way that the more space, the better, really, because even as chicks, their feces, their manure is like way more than it's like a standard breed. It's like twice the size.
Like a little cow in the house.
Yeah, and they the brooder space needs to be a lot bigger than what a standard breed of chicken would be, just because they go to the bathroom and it's big, and then they grow fast, and then they have the heat, so they're not going to need the lamp on them for long. But you're not going to want them in this like brooder area for too long if it's a brooder setup. Now, if it's like a stall or in a barn, that's a little different. You have more leeway, space. It's not so tedious for you. But most people want to get them outside as soon as possible.
Yeah, so get them out as soon as possible from the brooder.
So think about
that. The temperature is the important thing.
Yeah.
The outdoor temperature.
They're going to really just be covered in fuzz. They're down feathers. It's like, I don't quote me on this, but like around 3 weeks or so. It's similar to other breeds, like regular breeds, with the growth of feathers. They just keep getting meatier and meatier, and they're covered in fuzz.
So we raise these because of the utilitarian absoluteness of the Cornish cross. They're probably one of the best performing meat gaining birds. Like she said, there's some aspects of them people don't like, so they'll be raising a slow grower.
So yeah, I was saying with the way we're raising them is we have like a house. They're outside now there because it's warm temperature. We were thinking about the nighttime temperatures as far as when we got them, so that we could get them outside quickly. We have a house that they go in that's low to the ground because they don't they're not agile. And then I herd them into like a grass pen. It's a really big grass pen. And then I intentionally put their food in one area and then their water in a reasonable distance away from their food, and then and they're shaded. So what they do is they exercise. They run to the food, they run over to the water, they run, and pick grass, or they'll like go to a sunspot. So they're moving. So this setup is discouraging the really lazy, filthy temperament type thing. After they leave the brooder, what's too warm for them?
That's a good question. She lives out in the hot part of the country.
So if it's really hot, you're just going to want to have shade for them. They, I don't have like the technical temperatures for you.
I have a friend who knows. Google.
Yeah, people raise them, in hot climates
exactly.
and such, but now are you referring to like when to take them out of the brooder, or as far as temperature?
Susan?
Yeah, Susan.
She's probably concerned about because of the high temperatures where she is.
Yeah, I would just make sure they have plenty of shade. That's interesting, and that encouragement to move doesn't make the lazy ones just die because they won't.
Because they won't go to the water.
No, they move around, and I mean it's not like it's a mile away. It's like it's like
a few paces.
No, actually, it's like 20, 30 feet, but they're shaded, so they're not overheated, and they're moving around. You do want to be careful. Like, so I heard them, and they're just like bumbling little guys because they're so like plump. So I have to make sure that nobody's like overly exerting themselves.
Yeah, because of the structure of their body, body mass, and the way they're built. If you drop them,
you don't want to do that.
Tear a muscle or break something.
Yeah, you have to make sure that their leg muscles don't tear. I've heard they're just that lazy. Yes.
Yeah, well, it would be like a human weighing, 500 pounds. Like, it's just such mass.
Yeah, ours are 5.5 weeks old, a little more than 5.5 weeks old now, and they're running around. They run and flap their little wings.
They can't go on for long.
Then they plop down, take a breather, and then they'll run again, and they're exploring everywhere because of the setup. Now, if I had them in just like a pen where the food and water was like really close and there just was no reason for them to be moving around, then that's what they're going to do.
So if you're thinking of raising these animals and you have a smaller pen, that's something you're going to want to clean, right? Scrape
Or do deep litter.
Deep litter, or keep it clean because it'll
if
accumulate.
It's not a tractor.
Yeah, like if you're doing a small backyard, you're in a suburb, and you're like, oh, you know what? I'm going to try 2 or 3 of these birds. Mm-hmm. Even 2 or 3 of the birds will filth it up pretty quickly. So you want to have a way to maintain it. You want to keep that area clean for them. Otherwise, you're going to be like, because they'll get filthy. You're like, I'm not eating that.
But and people really do like to do the tractors. Okay, I love that you can do that, and they're more active. Yeah, and we've raised them before, and this is very different. Their behavior is very different with the way I'm handling them now. Like, they're moving around, and they're enjoying life. You can tell they're happy because they're not just lazy. They're enjoying life.
For at least for the next few weeks.
Yeah. So then there's other breeds, like Red Rangers, and they take a little longer to grow. Man, my Muscovies are kind of stink filthy like that.
Oh, I forgot to mention the whole Cornish cross. What's it crossed from? So it's crossed from a white Plymouth Rock, which is a bird that is white and I guess looks like a Plymouth Rock, this type of chicken, and then a Cornish chicken. You can look them online. They're meaty birds.
There's 2 different breeds.
So you can absolutely tell they're so domesticated. There is no way at all they would ever be able to survive.
No, and when we got them just as chicks, they were so friendly. I was like, oh my gosh. I call them monster chickens because they just morph so fast and they look so like different.
They're really
they're sweet.
So their temperament's fine. Like with kids, if you're concerned about them injuring or scaring a kid, like a rooster,
they're really sweet.
They're not going to do that. But they would never be able to function in the natural environment because they would get gobbled up and they wouldn't really run very far or do much to protect themselves. Has actual Cornish, and my shire has actual Cornish, and they are magnificent and huge. That's awesome. You should raise them. Kelly, get some Cornish or some other kind of giant meat bird back there.
So yeah, so the other types of broilers have different temperaments. Like the Red Rangers, they do move around more. So some people who want to, their setup has them in kind of like tight quarters, even if it's a tractor and they're moving them around. You know that the Red Rangers, they move around more than what the Cornish cross would, but they take longer to grow. And then even the taste of the meat can vary depending on the type of
Any
broiler.
breed, like some of these different breeds, heritage breeds, they taste different depending on and the diet too, of course.
So you figure out if you're interested. I mean, and again, if you want to try just doing 2 or 3, don't do 1 obviously because they're social creatures. But you don't have to do a whole bunch because you always see on the YouTube channels or whatever, there's 50. Like 50 or 30 birds. Like, whoa, you can just do a few birds. Because when you process them, if you're processing them at like 8 weeks, 8 to 10 weeks, it's like the size of a basketball, the meat that you're putting in your freezer for one.
Like that's primary objective. Like primary objective with these animals is I want to fill up a freezer. I want meat. And homegrown meat, and they just. I'm not gonna like fanboy on the Cornish cross, but these bigger meat breeds, they produce the meat that you're looking to get. You know, depending on the breed, it may take an extra couple weeks if it's a different breed or whatever. But they're producing a lot of really good homegrown meat. That's gonna, 1 bird, 2 birds, it just accumulates. Like the last time,
can do several grow outs.
Yeah.
Several sections.
We had 10, was that or 20 in that one flock? It was a bunch.
Yeah, we like
filled up a chest freezer. Yeah, it was a lot. And we have them. These birds get big. So they're, again, back to the first issue at hand. What's the objective of producing food? Magnificent food producers, and you don't need a ton of space, but if you have the space for them, I would look into it and definitely give it a go. A meat breed, Cornish or Cornish cross or the Reds or whatever it is. Just look into them and see what suits you. But so
I just wanted that's it. I just wanted to mention about the temperaments and how you raise them. It affects their behavior.
All right, let me think. I'm a guy who's never had chickens before. I'm getting meat birds. Is there any special dietary requirements? Do they need anything special? Are they eating layer feed?
No.
Why not?
Well, they're not laying eggs, so they don't need the calcium. Laying. The protein does need to be higher.
High protein.
Layer breeds, layer feed is usually around 16 to 18% protein.
So I'm calling my mill and I need broiler feed?
Yeah, the broiler will know. I believe the starter feed, and starter is like chicks to a certain weeks. And then finisher, is like, from, I don't remember the exact age, but weeks to when they're finished. It's a higher protein. It might be around 20%, 20 or 22%. When they're starting, and then it's a 19%, around 19%, and that's the protein. They need higher protein, kind of like the jumbo quail idea. They need higher protein to support that rapid growth.
So do the Cornish, do they peck and search like the other birds? Are they foragers as prevalent, or are they?
It depends on the setup. If you have, if you like the way we have them, and they're in this grass field, and we force them to have to go over to the food, then go over to the water, and they're in an area where they can find bugs and grass, they do eat them. They are foraging, they are looking for bugs and eating.
I will have to lobby one complaint. That used to be my pig play area.
Anyway, but if you have them in...
She doesn't want to talk about my baby pig.
If you have them in an area where there isn't any foraging material, any grass or anything like that, then obviously they're not going to forage. If you have them in a tractor, then they are going to eat grass. But they'll just, if it's a small confined area, they'll eat the grass, but they're not going to be moving around as much in that sort of setup.
Excellent. So anything else pertinent about the meat breed that one should know about raising? Housing, any special needs with housing?
Yeah, again, they aren't going to be stepping up. They're not athletic. Ours is
ground level, right?
Yeah, ours,
their
it's a couple inches up.
Yeah, but it's not a big incline.
Yeah, they're like short
and jumbos and crosses eat the same starter feed for the first 6 or so weeks.
The jumbos, they have a higher, the quail are a game bird, so their protein is higher than the Cornish cross. They don't need or the broilers, they don't need that high of a protein. Any scratch grains, so the feed that a feed mill or whoever you're buying the feed from, it's going to be mixed per the nutrition requirements for the fast growing. Scratch is kind of like a treat for birds. It's something
not
that
the
you would give them.
nutritive.
Yeah, it's something you would give them like cold months to encourage fat growth to help warm them, like a layer of warmth. It's not gonna. It's like a junk food. It's
not the base nutritional needs.
Exactly.
Usually.
Yeah. So if you're getting it from a feed mill, whoever you're getting it from, if you're getting it from, we recommend getting it from a feed mill. It's just cost benefit.
Cheaper.
You're going straight to the dude. They're
Fresher.
Yeah, it's fresh. Anyway, it's going to be a mix of different ingredients. Usually, it's going to be like a dry mash. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, one other thing. Can I feed them treats? You know, people love throwing their scraps out. Do they like apples? Can I give them treats?
I mean, I imagine you can. I would recommend distancing yourself emotionally because, again, they're for your freezer. Friendly. And they are very friendly. So you don't want to get attached to them. So if you're giving them treats and stuff.
The last thing you want is a pet, overweight, giant chicken that you have to pick up and walk around with.
Or
they're very friendly.
Some people you'll hear the Tractor Supply, oh, they got some chicks, they got a mix of chicks, Tractor Supply, and then you'll see the pictures on Facebook, like, why is this one so much bigger than this one? They're the same age. It's like Goliath. I'm like, that's a meat chicken. And the problem is, these people then will be like, oh, well, how can I keep them as a pet? Well, then when that happens, you have to restrict their eating because they naturally want to eat a lot because they've been bred to put on those pounds. So therefore, instinctively, they want to eat. So then they have to have a restricted diet to keep them low weight. So then their organs don't fail or their muscles and their legs don't tear, that sort of thing.
Oh, I got a good question.
Because they don't live as long.
A question that pops up in people's head and they don't ask. Are they genetically modified? Like people might be curious. Are these genetically modified birds to be big? No, they're not. So genetically modified, I got in an argument with a dude. He was telling me that the jumbo quail were genetically modified because they were jumbo and they weren't wild. I mean, I understood what his thinking was. He meant like they were manipulated. Their genes were manipulated through selective breeding, and that's completely different. They weren't, none of these birds where their genes were tampered with in a laboratory, like with a CRISPR, and reassembled to get a preferable outcome genetically. I want to get into like that. I'm very weary about such a thing. So no, they're bred. You know, we went through
selective breeding
to get this wonderful output. So it didn't need to go to the Frankenstein scientific route quite yet.
No, yeah.
But I'm working on a 6-legged chicken with my gene editing contraption over there, which is gene. No, I'm just kidding.
What the benefit would be.
I'm not doing that. So no, they're not genetically modified. They have been selectively bred.
Yeah.
Okay, and all the chickens, so chickens versus quail, I saw a discussion about this on the internet. They come from the Gallus gallus, which that's the Latin name for the wild jungle fowl in Indonesia. It's a little skittishy red chicken lives in the woods. Gallus gallus domesticus is that right? Yes, Gallus gallus domesticus is the chicken. Now there's only one species and many breeds, okay? Whereas quail, you have several species. And underneath those different species, you have different breeds. Cornish japonica, for example. The Cornish japonica, the jumbo quail. You know, and there's different breeds that are branched underneath of that. Tuxedo, I guess, Italian, and different things.
Yeah, a lot of them.
6 wings per chicken would be great. I know, that's why I said.
But you said legs, wings,
like,
yeah.
Vernon will know this. Do you remember back when wings were the trash? They were dirt cheap. People just threw them away. And then some idiot said, buffalo wings. And they skyrocketed in price. And they used to be trash. You bought them for fishing bait and crapping, and now they're really expensive.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, so Gallus gallus was the original wild jungle fowl and Gallus domesticus are all the chickens with varying breeds, just different breeds, same species, right?
Yeah.
I always find that I like this kind of stuff. Yeah, he remembers absolutely. Yeah, it's gone crazy.
Yeah. Do you guys have any? Let us know if you have any more questions as we're talking.
Yeah, I think we're almost done. Like
Yeah.
the primary issues with the meat birds. So the quail, we talk about them all the time. If you guys aren't familiar, like I said, they don't take a lot of space. They're cheap. They butcher ready at 8 to 10 weeks. 8 weeks we usually do a butcher. 1 egg per hen per day. About 300 eggs per hen per year. And they grow quick and they breed fast. They don't make any sounds. You can keep them. They don't make a lot of sound. They do make sound. Too many males, you get a lot of noise, but they're relatively quiet, much quieter than chickens anyway.
And they sound like wild birds.
They sound like wild birds.
Yeah.
And you keep them in a small space, and they're usually not regulated. So if you are prohibited from keeping chickens, and that's something you really wanted, and it's kind of demoralizing, oh, I really wanted to do something, you can do quail in most cases. So that's what's cool about them. Meat birds, they obviously are going to take more space. They're bigger. They're going to need a run, right? An area.
Like assess your space, what you have to work with, and I would say don't be discouraged by like if you see other people doing things a certain way, because there's you can raise them in different setups, as I've already explained. So, and you don't have to raise 8, 10, 15 birds. You can raise a small amount, raise them to processing, process them, start again.
Yeah, they grow so quick.
And you can fill your freezer really quickly because they are so big. They're quiet. Again, they're quiet because they're not going to reach maturity.
So when they mature, all that noise, their mating and their territorial noises start. So they're still really technically teenagers.
Yeah, they are.
So they're not even teenagers because they're not fighting yet. So they're quiet.
Even and males obviously the roosters are going to be bigger, but the females, the hens are also really big.
That is one negative. I forgot to mention. You're not reproducing them. You're not going to be laying and hatching eggs from the meat bird, from the Cornish crows.
So that's something. It might be if you're looking to buy just a few chicks. Sometimes the Tractor Supplies, I've noticed, depending on your area, they may sell out really quickly when they get them in. So if you're looking to buy from maybe online, it is something that you might have to think in advance to put an order in, because people are often ordering their chicks, weeks in advance. And you can pair up with one or a few people to, if there's a minimum order, like maybe you have to buy 15 or maybe you have to buy 10, then check around and see if there's somebody else you can pair up with and split your order with.
I was just going to say, if you're going to the tractor shop, call the manager or whoever does the poultry thing and find out who the breeder was, where they're getting their stock from, if just to investigate the quality of product, because we always talk about that. Know who you're ordering from, know your breeder. I don't think Tractor Supply is breeding those birds.
No.
So.
But I do know that once we get further into the summer, Tractor Supply, the chicks aren't, costly to begin with, but then they start just almost wanting to dump them on you because they want to move them. Yeah. So anyway,
Yeah, so there's a lot of benefits. Again, the primary benefit, obviously, is the production of meat. There's a lot of meat produced, and they do it very quickly. We'll compare the meat birds. I was just looking at my description here to make sure I didn't lie about what I talk about in this video, because I got everything I wrote. So I think I covered most of that stuff. But yeah, definitely check out the feed conversion chart I put in the description of this video. I made it. Yay. I like doing that. Crafts. So I made a craft.
He does like the crafts.
So I put that together, and it explains that. It's to be familiar with.
But a lot of you guys who maybe have been following us for a while know that we're big advocates and fans of the jumbo quail, and we always are, because they're awesome producers. But we also encourage people to have, if they can, a layered system, a layered food system. And we did actually do a video on that.
Yeah, we talked about it like 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago.
And if you can have different types of meats, different types of vegetables, different things that aren't dependent on each other necessarily, but you're benefiting from, you know, you're getting different types of meat to put in your freezer, and then you can cook different things. Then that's great. You know, that gives you more, it's more versatile and
one thing at a time.
taste.
If you're new to this stuff, add one thing at a time.
And start small.
Unless you got the finances to hire a team and walk you through and teach you everything, because it's skill acquisition really. Like buying stuff doesn't take any effort or time, but skill acquisition and learning how to do stuff, that's an investment. It's personal investment. And that happens when you do something. You learn through not doing well. And nobody does well the first time. Usually there's hiccups. I'm not saying you fail completely, but you know, things could have been done better, and it's a learning process. So all this stuff's a learning process. You know, what would you do differently? There's all these kinds of things you learn as you go along, but just give it a try, right?
Yeah.
Just give it a try and look into this stuff. If you've never done a meat chicken before, it's something to investigate if you could do that where you are. If you have the facilities to raise some of these critters, it's worth it. Oh, I forgot the other big, I guess, drawback for some people is they get butchered. You have to butcher them, or you can send them out.
Lots of people do pay somebody to do it.
You send them out, especially if you have a bunch of them, 10, 20 birds. That's a long days of work, so you can send them out to be processed, and it's usually not very expensive to do that.
Yeah.
Oh, my thing I'm going to eat from the birds, the feet. Ugh. Why? So I'm going to actually turn it into a broth because it's extremely high in collagen, which is very, very good for you. It's good for your skin, hair, eyes. It's good for everything. And there's another, I forget what it does. I don't want to get into that. But yeah, so I'm going to boil that down. I was actually going to feed it to you without you knowing in the form of a soup, like a broth. So, but that's what broths are. You take the part of the animal that nobody wants to touch or eat, and you boil it for a while, and then you strain it, and then add vegetables to it, or whatever you're doing with it. It becomes a broth. And then we talk about the bone broths and everything. It has all these collagens and nutrients in it that are actually very good for you. And people throw the chicken feet away. That's horrible. Or they give them as dog treats. But this year, I'm going to be making a delicious pot of boiled chicken's feet. I think people will think I'm a witch or something. Like I'm making some kind of cauldron stew.
One note, too, with thinking about when to process the age. You're going to want to consider your freezer space. Like, you just... goals. Figure out your goals. Know what you're planning. Because you don't want to really, like, figure it out as you go, you know, the most. You want to plan things out. Because you might get, like, super excited. Like, oh, my gosh, I'm just going to get 6 birds. And then I'm going to let them grow out as big as possible. And then it's processing time. And so you get to a point where you really don't want to let them keep growing. Because... again, it's like a huge dog syndrome. Like their organs, it's harder on their organs to keep, you know, supporting them, their legs. So you do have to cut off when you process them. But then you don't want to be like, oh my gosh, I don't have any freezer space for all this meat. So now I have to buy a freezer. Or suddenly figure out, like, who can I give this meat to? Like, you want to plan, you know, you want to take advantage, like, use what you're growing. You don't want to end up wasting anything.
Because you'll have, like, zucchini syndrome.
Yeah.
When everybody shows up at work with the bags of zucchinis. Like, oh,
I mean, I think people would be excited to get free, you know, meat or whatever, healthy meat. But then also think about, well, how do you want to use the meat? Do you want to have whole birds? Do you like to cook and put in the oven a whole bird? Consider the size. You know, just look into, like, well, how big does it get?
Yeah, they don't all have to
each
be
age?
processed on the same date. You could do some, you know, the 6 week, the 8 week, or however you're divvying it up. It doesn't have to all be done at the same time. You can do it at a younger age and a smaller bird for whatever that purpose is, right? Versus a larger animal.
Yeah.
I mean, personally, with these things full grown, they're about the size of a small turkey.
Right.
They're really big.
Yeah.
And,
And then, of course, you could, you know, have like have them or put the wings and the legs and thigh, like breast meat and stuff packaged together. But just things to like details. That's all.
But again, as in the beginning, like we always do, with anything, know your goal, why you're doing what you want to do, rather than just doing something and trying to figure out why, which people do a lot of times. That's the impulse buy. Oh, I got a bunch of chickens. Why? Ooh. And you figure out why later, and you figure out a purpose. So you usually figure out why first. This way there's more structure to what you're doing, so it doesn't overwhelm you.
Right.
So, I want to eat, I think we'll eat 1 chicken a month or 2 chickens a month. So I want 10 or 24 or whatever. And because I think these chickens satisfy as 2, like you can cut them in half and it's basically, because they're so large, I consider 1 chicken to be 2. I can raise 10 of them. And to me, that's like 20 chickens because they're they're huge.
Yeah, and for us, I wanted to do small groups. So, and I also wanted to have enough for a whole year. So I'm doing a small group beginning of the, warm season, and I'm going to do another small group toward the end, and then they'll be processed in the early fall. So you can do that. You don't have to do all of it at once.
Are we getting more?
I'd like to.
Okay.
Just a few.
I actually went back to the store the next day to secretly get like 5 more.
I would have been upset because I'm the one that takes care of them.
They were all gone.
Yeah, they sell pretty quick.
They were all gone. Yeah. But I never treat myself to store chickens. Anyway, I guess that about wraps it up.
Yeah.
Super glad for you guys to stop in. Like I said, we do put effort into making useful stuff, not just nonsense rambling, although I do a bit of that.
Yeah. But if this is, helpful to you, please subscribe, like the video.
Send it out to the buddies. That's right. Share that, because we're trying to build a community to actually assist other humans to do fun human stuff to enjoy with their family and learn skills and not be intimidated. I cannot stand when the know-it-all farm person, I've been doing this 25 years, you don't know how to do this. I cannot stand those people. People who don't encourage, they're the worst. So we like to encourage people, do stuff, try things. And I said this before in a video, I guess like a year ago. And it's so true. There are people who've been doing something for 30 years, but they started out wrong, and they've just been doing it wrong for 30 straight years. And they think that they're an expert in this skill set, even though it's a simple repetitive thing, and they learned it wrong, and they've been doing something improper.
Remain teachable.
Yeah, right. Remain teachable. Nobody's perfect. We don't know everything. I guess that's it. Moral of the story is we're people. Thank you. Time to go put the ducks and quail up on night. Oh, Susan, thanks, hon. It was very nice having you stop in. Have a wonderful and beautiful evening. Everybody else do the same. Any last words before I say goodbye?
Yeah, thanks everybody for watching.
Hope to see you next week, probably at the same time, unless the sun goes to bed at 4 in the afternoon again, like winter.
Good night.
Good night, my friends.
Bye.
Bye.